It was really disturbing to have her curled up in my children's room.
A Northeast Portland household shaken after an intruder walks right in, makes themselves at home. Mental health experts tell us it's clear this person was in crisis.
K2's Eric Mock joins us live from the street where it all happened. And Eric, this had to be upsetting for that family involved.
Yeah, Kelsey Smith says it was a disturbing experience for her, and she's worried more now than ever for her family's safety and the security of her home after what she says is a reminder of just how severe the mental health and homeless crises in Portland are.
Yeah, they came in the front door and they wandered into my children's room and crawled up onto the bed.
Kelsey Smith shows us where an intruder came into her home Tuesday and got into her 10-year-old son's bed.
And I got closer and realized it was a homeless person. So I immediately backed out of the room and, sort of hollering to my friend that I was on the phone with for help.
After confronting her, the intruder picked up an ottoman and threw it at her before leaving. Smith says she had her door unlocked because they had contractors who were working on their home coming in and out.
It was really disturbing to have her curled up in my children's room. I mean, the safety of this whole household feels like it's just been upended.
She says she's just grateful her son wasn't home at the time. What do you see when you look at a video like this?
Well, it tells me that this person is clearly in crisis and is not getting access to the care that they clearly need.
That's Jeff Woodward, manager of the Mental Health and Addiction Outreach Team for the Joint Office of Homeless Services. He says with the limited resources available, they can't help people in crises of addiction or mental health unless they want to be helped.
It's a fine line that we have to navigate every day because we have to balance between the rights of the individual and their right as an adult and their self-determination.
Smith says for her, it's a clear sign that much more needs to be done here.
I get it, but something has to change. I mean, something has to change. I hope that the city officials are doing something different than what they've been doing because it's not working.
Yeah, we're at the Beaverton Transit Center, and that could be anything from just needing assistance of some sort to seeing someone you think is suspicious. There's quite a range, but one thing that stays the same, the variety of calls coming in, that does not seem to change. Out of the thousands of calls the Multnomah County Sheriff's Transit Division and TriMet get, shootings usually end up being handled by another jurisdiction, Beaverton Police, Portland, Gresham, so on. So this list is not the most serious crimes, just what the Transit Division is responding to most often. At the top of the top 5 is welfare checks, with 249 calls in the last 91 days. That's followed by nearly 200 calls about suspicious people or vehicles, then unwanted persons, disturbances, and calls for assistance. In the previous 3 months, welfare checks, unwanted person calls, and suspicious subjects and vehicles were also the top 3. That's where they were the previous year. But as far back as a year ago, the Beaverton Transit Center was at the top for most calls overall. Bus rider Jacinda Clark is surprised by that.
Like over here in Washington County, it's not very worrisome, but Multnomah County, it's probably more of a problem. It's probably a lot scarier out there. This is a cakewalk compared to Multnomah.
Just last month, there were 2 shootings near the transit stop at Northeast 122nd and Burnside. But still, that area doesn't even make the top 5 for most calls. But Beaverton Transit Station does and has for the past year. Mike Miller thinks maybe people are reporting crimes that aren't really crimes.
That's also the problem is everybody that's got a smartphone is like, oh my God, you're dangerous because you're minding your own business in a car half the time. I don't know. Unless they're being if they're not confrontational to me, the people in the cars, I'm not going to be confrontational to them.
Measure 114 will be the most progressive action taken in this nation this year.
It is an extreme measure, and people need to know what's actually in it.
New tonight, opposing views on how to solve gun violence. Those supporting a measure that will be on your November ballot saying data shows this will reduce the number of deaths, while those opposing the measure say taking away guns is not the answer. Good evening. Thanks for joining us for K2 News at 11. I'm Deborah Knapp. Main points of Measure 114 include requiring a permit issued by law enforcement to buy a gun, completing approved safety training, and prohibiting ammunition magazines holding more than 10 rounds. K2's Catherine Kissel joins us live. And Catherine, what have you learned?
Yeah, Deb, the people who are for and against this measure are passionate about their respective efforts, and they want voters to have a clear understanding what this measure will do.
When I hear a high school senior, nephew say, when I asked him what his top goals were this year, 1 was good grades, 2 was a great college, 3 was not getting shot.
We met with Reverend Mark Knudsen with Augustana Lutheran and asked him why he and many of his colleagues have joined this grassroots effort to pass Measure 114.
So we're doing it because our young people are living with the anxiety of gun violence every day.
Tonight at the church, the bells toll 105 times, one for each person lost to gun violence this year in Portland. The Reverend says he believes Measure 114 is what's best, not only for Oregonians, but to be one of the first in the country to rise up and act against gun violence.
It's going to turn the tide to say somewhere in this nation, citizens in a democratic society can stand up and say, we can do this together.
Not everyone is together on this. If Measure 114 isn't the answer, what is the answer?
You know, I think that's a great question. And the problem is that there's not an easy answer is let's take people's firearms rights away.
That's Kevin Starrett, the director of the Oregon Firearms Federation. He says the proponents of Measure 114 are misleading the public.
What the measure does is completely eliminate people's ability to protect themselves and their family because it sets up roadblocks that really can't be met.
Starrett says some of the roadblocks include requiring local law enforcement to issue gun permits and providing on-site safety training for applicants when law enforcement is already stretched so thin. He says if people want to get serious about gun violence, they need to ask themselves some tough questions.
The reality is that in almost every case where we've seen a mass shooting, the people who did it telegraphed their intentions well ahead of time. But nothing is done about that. Nobody intercedes. Nobody takes a step to say, what is going on here? In fact, all we do is take away the rights of people who've done nothing wrong, who've hurt nobody.
Even the Reverend agrees that the crisis requires much more than a measure on the ballot.
So much bigger than just one measure. We're not claiming this is going to end it, but it's a big step.